Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for attending our webinar hosted today by Scylla and GSIS, Global Security Innovative Strategies, and our distribution partner, Southwest Automated Security. So the goal of the webinar today is to talk about how technology can be used in different methods, different situations, scenarios, to prevent active shooter situations. And with me today, I have Frank O'Neill. Hello, Frank.
Good morning, Chris.
So just to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'll let Frank go in and tell you a little bit about his experience and background. I am the Vice President of Global Sales for Scylla. We develop AI-powered video analytics. And Frank, I'll let you tell us a little bit about you.
So good morning. Thanks for letting me participate in this. This is something that is really important. So I am Frank O'Neill. I did 26 years as an FBI agent, assigned up and down the East Coast, primarily doing violent crime and drug-related cases, did some terrorism as well, and did some specialty type of things, which I may talk about a little bit of, physical security, those types of operations where we were doing covert entries into facilities based on FISA warrants. But we were utilizing just technology actually to be able to do that. And so I'll talk to you a little bit about that. But right now I'm the managing director for cybersecurity at GSIS. And so we have partnered with Scylla. And we really believe in the product, and so that's why we're here to just talk about that and its advantages. And it says to prevent. We can't prevent the person from coming to the scene. Okay, that's a little bit of a risk. I mean, that's a little bit of a bridge too far, I should say. But what we can do is allow more time as the active shooter threat begins. So. Where no one's immune, and you see here in 2021, 29,000 people have been killed just from gun violence, okay, in the U.S. Now that is just murders and people that are shot just on the streets. But in 2021, the FBI identified 61 mass shooter events, okay, which they characterized those. They occurred over 30 states, and in all, okay, so 61. So just to compare it to 2020 had 40. So this was an increase of approximately, yes, you see there in 2020 there were 40. In 2021 there were 61. So that's an increase of 50%. And the other fact is that in 2020, of those 40 shootings, 40 incidents, there were 164 casualties. Now that is 38 that were killed and 126 that were wounded. And in 2021, that also increased by 50%. That went up to 243 with 103 being killed. That's a huge increase from 38. And then to 140 wounded. So a total of 243 casualties in 2021. So a marked increase over that. Just kind of how these things resolve. In 2021, the stats we have are that 30 of them, okay, there were 61 of them, 30 of them were arrested, okay, and then 30 were either died by suicide, 11 of them died by suicide, and then the others were either killed by law enforcement or a citizen. And then there is just still one that is at large. That's the only one that wasn't solved. So the number of incidents, just to say, is increasing. Just to give you some interesting thoughts, just some stats about that the month where more incidents take place is in June. And that was, I believe, almost a quarter of them were in June. And there was, yeah, a little less, there was like 12 of them in June. And then the month with the least number of shootings, which surprised me a little bit, was December. And that was only one that was from 2021. The day of the week that is most targeted, if you will, is a quarter of them occurred on Saturdays. So that is also an interesting stat. So anyway, if you will, go on to the next slide.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to argue. I mean, everybody that's interested in this call or in this topic, the active threats shooters are increasing year over year. You know, everybody can debate the reasons why, but we're not here to identify the reasons why. We're here to identify things and methods and procedures that we can take to help prevent them from actually taking place or any mass casualties.
Yes. So what we have is when you have a mass shooter incident, the statistics are that within these last 10 to 15 minutes on average. That is 10 to 15 minutes where the shooter is unrestrained, able to do whatever they want. And that is what we're talking about here. That is really the target. And that is trying to reduce that number. So what I know is that when you are, when a law enforcement comes up on a scene, the more information, I should say, the more headway they have as far as notice ahead of time that they have, that is so important. So with the Scylla tool, you have an AI on a camera that is able to identify things that are anomalies. And so you have, in most active shooter incidents, they have long guns. And so this is a long gun approaching a school, and that is not normal. And so what happens here is with that capability, you have advanced notice as they approach the building. Security is notified. Security is aware. It could be that they are able to lock down the building. They are able to move. They are able to announce. They are able to get 911. They are able to activate law enforcement, to activate security, to activate the PA system to let people know that something is going on.
So, from the statistics on the locations, there really is no place that is immune from an active shooter potential situation or scenario. It breaks down pretty evenly, scattered throughout everything from, stadiums to fairs to festivals, crowds, malls, schools, hospitals, places just everywhere that we all go every day. So, what's the question? What can we do to help prepare for those situations and help minimize? And, from what you were just saying, Frank, it sure sounds like the biggest thing is time, right?
Yes.
So identify the threat early, identify it outside, and then you have the ability, the organization has the ability to take every precious second and make a counter move, right, to help minimize those damages.
Yeah, so part of this is active shooter training. No one wants to do that. It's just something that is not really popular, but it is very important. And the 3 tenets of active shooter training are: first, you run. Second, if you can't run, the first thing and the best thing is to run. Leave the building as the best exit possible. The second is to hide. If you can't run, then hide. And that is to take cover. That is to barricade yourself in. That is to, one of the things that everybody, just needs to think about in this time is to silence phones and silence everything that would indicate that there is a person in there. And that is so. If you can't run and if you can't hide, then you are, the last is to fight. And that is the one that we do not want to have to do. That is law enforcement's job. And so the more time we have people to get there, the more we have the ability to run, for everybody to leave the building. There are no victims. People have left the building. And so if we have advance notice, we can run. And if that works, then we are reducing the number of casualties at each event.
So one of the questions is, how do we get those extra precious seconds? What are some of the things that we can do beyond, calling in an expert, a professional like yourself to come in and do an active shooter readiness assessment for an organization? What are some of the tools, or some of the procedures that we can do to gain some of those extra seconds?
And so, just like I was saying before, the timing, knowing that they are there before the first, when most people know an active shooter is in the building is when the first round goes off. And that is usually the advance notice that you have. To have the ability to know that someone is approaching the building with a long gun, that is acting, usually what they also have is the acting erratically out in the parking lot. You have people that pull up and they are, they think about it, they are moved, their movements are not normal. That is another kind of AI analytic that is possible with a tool like Scylla to alert you that it goes to the security, it goes to the security operations center or whatever, and it says, it draws the attention to them and says, there is someone in the parking lot acting erratically. Or you also see them, close their trunk, close their car, and there is a long gun. Maybe they try to hide it in something, but when they pull it out, it is visible. It is visible at some point where you see, like here on the screen, the gun detection. It is just maybe for just a split second, it is visible before they try to cover it up, before they run in. But that is the truth. These things usually are notified when the shooter first cranks off the first round. To have that kind of notification to allow, if you've been trained to say, okay, what happens when we give out this alarm over the PA system? It means to run to the exits, okay? And they will tell you which exit to run to. It is running, and it is, so if we can get out of the building, this thing is alleviated. You give more time for law enforcement. You have the potential to lock down the school, to make them have to fight their way into the school or to the business or to the stadium or to whatever they're going to. That is precious moments that can only be obtained by proactive means of identifying the threat, not waiting for it to start.
So by using technology, by using AI, like right now, if somebody's doing nothing, right, you just have your security cameras in place, quietly recording, which everybody has. 99% of that never gets viewed unless something bad happens. You go back and something bad happens, you say, yep, this is the bad guy, this is the bad thing that happened. But by then it's too late. Then everything's being used forensically and the bad things have already happened. But where Scylla comes into play and using technology to buy those extra seconds, we're using computer vision, right? So we're adding intelligence to that existing security camera system that's already sitting there recording. And the AI replaces a human watching every single camera live and in real time. And it watches for threats, for objects, actions, for anomalies, like you mentioned. And so imagine, if you will, let's just use a school, for example, where they'll have maybe on average 70 to 120 cameras, somewhere in between. If you have cameras on the perimeter, on the parking lots, on the exterior of the buildings, usually nobody knows there's an active shooter without anything going on until that first shot is fired. And, a human hears it, you react, and, they make the 911 call. But if you see somebody walking up through the parking lot, just by logic, all active shooting situations have to start outside and then they move indoors. So if you can harden a facility and funnel everybody to maybe a front door and use AI to watch doors to make sure they're closed, that they're not propped open, to make sure that nobody's tailgating, coming in through, letting somebody in through a side door where they shouldn't. There's a lot of different ways that that AI can be used. So if you have cameras in a parking lot and that bad guy comes, he pulls into his parking lot, he pulls his rifle out of the trunk or back seat, whatever. The second he can steps foot in front of one of those parking lot cameras, immediately Scylla has the ability to identify that weapon, memorize what that person looks like, even if we don't know who he is, even without using facial recognition, and simultaneously send alerts to security, to police, to the resource officer, to the school secretary, and send them an alert that a weapon has been detected. And at the same time, we can tie into access control. We can lock that front door. So this is where we're talking about buying seconds. We're trying to slow them down. If you put up, some bullet wraps, if you harden the front door, you harden that front entry point, the side doors are all locked. The AI is watching to make sure that the side doors are closed. Make sure that, using our traffic flow analysis to make sure that nobody's opening the door and letting somebody in where they shouldn't be coming in. Would tie into that access control and literally lock the front door. And that could buy, seconds. It could buy minutes. It could buy, a lot of valuable time so that people can take countermeasures.
Yeah, that's an important part of it, is just trying to delay to give law enforcement time to get there. And it would be wonderful if all of these events were now where people were learning, that mass shootings are not effective anymore. That once you get to the location, they have advance notice. It's locked down. It's going to take time to get through there. By the time they get through the barricades or get through the locks or have able to get through, law enforcement could be there. And that would be wonderful if the message was out there that this is not the thing to do, that it's ineffective and that it doesn't work, okay, because you're being seen from the outside. So let me just tell you an example. I was mentioning to you in my prior life with the FBI, what I was doing was we were entering facilities, homes and things like that needed to be done based on a warrant, okay? We needed to be able to see what was going on in there. And this is a technique that's known out in the public, as books have been written about it. So I can talk about that, but not about subjects. And so one of the things that we're doing is we as the FBI, as we're reviewing this and determining whether we want to enter this facility. Now, these people are not home, okay? They're not home. We're not doing it while they're there. We're doing it when they're away, and we want to be able to see what is in their home, okay? And so one of the things we would have to do is an evaluation of the risk versus the reward. Now, if we knew that a facility, a house, or whatever had an AI tool on it that was going to spot anomalies as we approached, that would have given us pause. And so, that is the type of thing, the power that this has. The other thing that is very important for law enforcement, and this is another tool that that GSIS is involved with, as well as Scylla. Scylla is and these are incorporated into, can be incorporated into the Scylla platform, and that is situational awareness platforms. These are one of the ones that we have tested is Intrepid, and what it does is it allows law enforcement to track each other. So everybody knows where everybody is all the time. Now, I'm telling you, this was not available when I was working. I was a supervisor of a drug squad. At one point, I ran drug operations. I came to bank robberies where when you come on the scene, there is chaos. Okay, there's chaos. And you have situations where nobody knows where everybody is. And so for the ability of law enforcement to use these tools, such as everybody, you use it on the platform of your phone. It isn't that you have to have another device. It's an app on your phone. It allows you to be tracked. It allows voice as well as text messaging, and everybody knows where you are. That was so big of a deal when we used to do drug cases, and we needed to know where everybody was. We needed to know where our surveillance units were. We needed to know where the targets were. We needed to know where our product was, our money. If we were going to bring money, we needed to know where that was. And I'm telling you, those types of things for law enforcement, when they show up on the scene, they have advance notice from a Scylla that there is someone on the scene, and they're pretty sure, they know that it's a long gun. Okay, that's good knowledge. You show up on the scene and everybody knows where everybody is. That is incredible information. It is very useful to law enforcement. It is very useful in knowing what to do next, and knowing what you can do and where your assets are.
And what you just mentioned, Frank, is really important, is the power of integrating with other platforms and complementing each other. Scylla is computer vision, right? So we can see if it's visible to a camera, the AI, the neural network, can actually see and identify it. Just like your eye sees something, your brain takes that image, analyzes it, processes it, and makes a decision what to do with it. That's what we've trained Scylla. It's a true neural network that does both supervised and unsupervised learning. So the camera's the eye, the Scylla is the brain. The camera sees it, Scylla analyzes what that camera's seeing live and in real time, and then makes a decision on what to do with it based on what it's trained to do. And it never sleeps, it never looks away, it never blinks, it never comes in tired. It just watches every camera live 24/7 for the specific threat that you told it to. And so when you're talking about, integration of situational tools, those real-time, communication platforms, we can, once we identify the threat, we can hand that off to another platform so that it can be, the threat can be dealt with. And that's one of the things too, is we're computer vision. There's multiple ways to identify guns, right? There's acoustic. You wait for the gunshot to happen, the sensors pick it up. But by then, the damage is already done. A round's been fired. There's concealed weapon detection. Everybody knows what that is. TSA, going through the airport, concerts, whatever. But if you have a motivated bad guy, you don't have to have just one or the other, because they could defeat one or the other, like defeat the metal detectors. So we can work in cooperation with those other technologies. So if somebody defeats the metal detector, then Scylla can go in and, we can either pick them up before they get to the metal detector, because if you have a bad guy coming, he's going to shoot his way through that metal detector. Or if you identify somebody with a gun, then you have to have an armed person there, an armed security or police, to decide what to do with that threat. So Scylla can pick them up in advance and give those guys at the metal detectors, seconds to make a decision on what to do. When every second counts. We can work in cooperation with acoustic gunshot detection, for example. So if you have an acoustic gunshot detection, it could be a false alarm. If you have a visual, it could be a false positive. But if you have an acoustic detection at the same place where you have a visual detection, there's a pretty good chance that that's a real active shooter situation going on. And then we integrate with platforms like an Intrado, PSAPs, for example. We can route those alerts or detections directly to the closest 911 dispatch center. So if you're an enterprise, GSOC, and you're monitoring, thousands of locations across the country, and you do identify a threat, then you have to break out your spreadsheet, you look, what's the closest 911 dispatch center, you're thumbing through. And again, time's ticking right now, bad things are happening. Where Scylla can automatically route that to the closest 911 dispatch center anywhere in the country, and then send those alerts directly to the 911 dispatch center, and open a live chat and start sending images and clips of the threat, and know exact location of where that person is based on the cameras that are picking them up. So there's a lot of different technologies that can be used in cooperation. We can either be used alone, or we can be used, as a part of an overall larger security, platform. So, showing some examples here of gun detections. The detections that you're looking at are live. The one on the right with the little child holding the rifle. That one, that was a live detection a couple of years ago at the Iowa State Fair. They sell toy guns at the fair, and but police don't know if they're toy guns. The public doesn't know. So we can go in. We'll tell the police live and in real time before any of the public can see somebody. They're not supposed to open the guns. They're supposed to be physically wrapped, right, and concealed before anybody leaves. But in places like city parks and places where kids are playing, whether they're playing, whatever, we can put real-time eyes on that and let the police know in advance before they come in hot, because they got to assume everything is, is a real life threat. So in this case, somebody calls it in, the police say, nope, we already know. Scylla's already told us that there's somebody holding a rifle here. We looked at it, it's obviously a child, no threat. And, it averts some potential strategy. And also, like the camera on the left, we were doing some, testing in a hospital, and the camera at the end of the hallway was supposed to pick up the gun in this guy's hand. At first, we thought it was a false positive until we looked and we saw the reflection in the mirror, or not the mirror, in the window. So Scylla is incredibly accurate. And when we're identifying guns, we're not just identifying the probability that an object is a gun. We're also identifying the probability of aggression with it. So if you have a holstered, a police officer has a holstered weapon, we're going to watch it. We know it's a gun, but we're not going to trigger alerts until somebody's hand touches that gun. The second somebody's hand touches it, whether it's the officers, whether it's somebody else's, that's when Scylla gets excited. And that's when we start triggering the alerts, because the probability of violence is increased. Same thing with, you can disguise a rifle as a walking cane, for example, but we don't want to send an alert every time there's a walking cane. So, but if somebody holds that walking cane up in a shooting prone position, Scylla looks at it and we say, we know that's not a rifle, we know that's not a shotgun, but that's a shooting position. So it is smart enough to say, we better call in we better notify a human to come over here and take a look at this and zoom in live and make the final determination whether to take action or whether to, it's, harmless. And also Scylla does machine learning. So if you are in a band room of a school, somebody's holding a violin up, for example, Scylla the first time may look at it and say that's a shooting position, but based on its interaction with that environment and the operators, they say, no, that's normal for the band room. So Scylla will learn and stop giving those threats and detections. We know that's normal, that's a violin, no threat. But if somebody takes that same violin, goes out in front of the secretary's office in the front entryway, it's not normal to do that there. So if somebody starts holding something up in a threatening shooting position in front of the school secretary, then Scylla's going to get excited again, and we're going to trigger the alerts. So it's a really intelligent platform. It's not just rules-based pixelation changes in the camera. It's a true neural network of both supervised and unsupervised learning. So, one other thing, we talked about is, not only identifying the weapon or the threat, but also getting an idea of the bad guy in advance. So things like you mentioned, Frank, identifying them early in, can Scylla pick up these people? If you look on the right here, there's a little guy in the back corner. Scylla looks at that and we know that that's a human. We can look and we can identify, it's even impossible to pick this up with your eye, where these people are hiding in these different detections. But one other thing is BOLO lists. In some parts of the country, facial recognition is a bad word. In other places, it's embraced. But for those places that do decide they want to use it, Scylla is not invading privacy when we're using our facial recognition. We are literally watching for, however you want to use it. We're not recording anything. Your security system is already recording that on your NVRs or through your VMS. What Scylla does is we get those feeds, separate feeds fed to our servers. We're a server-based solution, can reside in the cloud, on premise, or on the edge, or a hybrid mix of any of those. And when our servers are analyzing those video streams, we can watch for, a BOLO list or for be on the lookout. And if you're in a hospital, for example, and you have somebody that has made a threat, or you're a sports stadium, somebody's made a threat against the team or the player, you're a school and somebody's, usually people have a little bit of advance warning on who the bad guys are or who has made that most recent threat. And so then Scylla can watch using our facial recognition. We can identify those people once they step foot on the ground to the premise. And again, it goes back to that advanced warning, and every second counts. We can say this is a bad guy who's been identified and he's now stepped foot on the grounds, or he's at the front entrance or walking through. And so then security can go over and intervene. But that's one thing about Scylla and our facial recognition. It's not the traditional mapping points on a person's face. I mean, that all got blown up when the masks and the COVID situation, you're covering people's face. But Scylla will take, and we can remember what a person looks like. The AI literally memorizes a person's face using unsupervised learning. So like if all of a sudden, Frank, you're wearing a beard and glasses, you have to take your look, and all we need is like a thumbnail image of that person. We've done tests side by side with competitors of 10-year-old photographs, and some of those people being children and maturing. Scylla's smart enough to anticipate what that person's going to look like aging. And we can, and then, 10 years later, he's wearing glasses, changed his hair color, he's shaved his beard, maybe have some scars on his face, but Scylla will look at that and say, there's a pretty good possibility that that's the same person. So the facial recognition that we have used in cooperation with the gun detection, with the intruder detection, with the anomaly detection that you're talking about is just a pretty powerful combination of tools. And a lot of people might ask, well, how can you do all of those detections? How's that possible? Well, Scylla's a brain. It literally is a brain, and we can teach it and train it to watch for anything, just like a newborn baby or like a puppy. So, the analogies, my favorite analogy for AI is like a puppy that somebody gets for their home, because you want to know when intruders are coming up to your house. So somebody comes up, they knock on your door, they walk by your window, that puppy's going to go up and it's going to bark. But if you ignore it, you don't train it, you don't give it any love and attention, it's also going to pee on your floor and chew on your shoes. All right. So it works mostly, sometimes you're happy with it, sometimes you're not. But if you give that puppy some love, some training, or that baby some love and a training, that puppy turns into a tool, into a police dog, into a weapon, into an invaluable tool that's walking, moving around with hand signals, and a tool that you can't live without. And that's what Scylla can do for your security organization. You give it a little love, you give it a little attention, you train it, and all of a sudden it makes sure whether it's your corporate headquarters, whether it is a someplace with mass gatherings like stadiums, fairs, it can be anything, distribution centers, office buildings. It's just an invaluable set of eyes. It turns your cameras into another set of eyes for your security. So you can monitor dozens, hundreds, thousands. There's no limit to the number of cameras that can be monitored live 24/7. So, some other questions that we've had is, can you use these analytics with moving cameras? The answer is yes. Scylla works with moving backgrounds. So dash cams, body cams, drones, pan tilt zooms. You can go out and you can identify, we have sports stadiums where we have PTZs mounted up in the lights in the scoreboard that go out on patrol. And they are on tour, and they go out and they look on rooftops, on balconies, on any place where people shouldn't be. And we'll look for humans there, and specifically humans with guns. And if we see it, then we trigger the alert, and the GSOC takes over. But it literally can go on tour, and we can detect from drones as well. So there is, the fact that we have moving backgrounds. Let me show you a quick example of a gun detection from a drone. It just gives you an example of the power. And other questions that we get is, what's the quality of the camera that you need for this? Well, from a drone, you're going to want a minimum of a 4K camera. And Scylla has the ability to see that high resolution and then zoom in when we see the threat. And it'll go in and see things in that high resolution that the human eye can't even see. So, we talked a little bit about, again, this is using it from a drone. It could be a pan tilt zoom. It can be from, can be for your cell phone, anywhere where we can get access to the RTSP stream of that camera. Scylla can watch it live and in real time. So we talked a little bit about the technology. We talked about hardening your perimeters. We talked about, the active shooter readiness assessment. Planning in advance is huge. Getting an experienced professional like you to come in and review somebody's strategy and their plan and their tools, what they have. There's no, planning is probably the best tool there is. And then you go out and you look for some of these different, technologies that can be used to complement what everybody's, currently doing.
Yeah, what I think is, as we look at this is, again, as I said at the beginning, we can't prevent the person from coming to the scene. That is the thing that we can't do with AI, with this product, okay? Maybe in some time in the future. But as far as what we can do is we can prevent the casualties from mounting. And that is really the beauty of this, is targeting the number of casualties. It is targeting the time that it takes to respond. It is targeting the ability for law enforcement to know what's going on when they arrive, to have some advanced knowledge. It is targeting the ability of your training program where you run, you hide, you fight if necessary, but it gives you the option of running, okay? And that is the first and foremost and most important thing that you can do to prevent casualties, is to run, is to know your facility. Where are the exits? Are they blocked? That's one of the things that we tend to do, is the back door that nobody uses very often, it gets blocked. And so knowing what to do, what are we going to do? How do we, where are we going to run? And again, what are we going to do if we can't run? We don't have enough notice. We're going to hide. And how do we hide? What are we going to do? How are we going to barricade? How are we going to, where are we going to move into the room? All of those things. And then to fight is, that's the most tragic one. That's the one that nobody wants to do. But if we can leverage AI, we can leverage technology, maybe we won't have to get to that point. Maybe we just run.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of different things, obviously planning, preparing, using the tools that are available to you, the latest, the greatest, the best technology. With Scylla and our AI, again, it is just tested again and again and again by everybody that, because analytics have been overpromised and underdelivered for the last, 10, 12 years. But when people contact us, they try it, they test it, they put it side by side with whatever they're currently using, and seeing is believing. Some of our biggest skeptics become our biggest advocates at that point. So, it is a matter of preparing. It is a matter of using the tools that are available to us. It's almost, 5 years ago, this was science fiction, what we're doing, but today it's reality. It's not magic. It does have limitations. So Scylla will not only tell you what we can do, but will also tell you what we can't do, so that you're using the tool appropriately. You're not taking a wrench and trying to use it as a hammer. So when you have Scylla and you go out and you're looking and you're using it properly, using the way that it should be used with the right cameras and the right locations for the right detections, you know exactly what you're going to get, and it becomes an invaluable tool that is going to save lives. It does. And when that translates to early identification of a shooter, an active shooter, and identifying and tracking the location of that shooter. When that happens, you can come in, police come in, they know exactly where to go, they know exactly what threat to neutralize. And like you said, Frank, people can start evacuating safely. So if you can do that run first, then there's, like you said, there's nobody left in the building to shoot. So minimize, potential damage, maximize the detection time, and it's just something that is so easy that, a tool that can be used and implemented so easily that actually is being utilized by so many different businesses, organizations, sports teams, sports clubs, hospitals. So, all I can say is if anybody has any questions, contact us directly. I've got the information up on the screen right now. We're kind of wrapping up and getting to the end. We don't want to, tie everybody's time up too much, but if anybody has any questions, we're happy to take them through the chat. And if there aren't any questions, we can, give it a second, but reach out to us at inquiries@scylla.ai, reach out to Frank O'Neill directly, reach out to myself, Chris Greiner, kgreiner@scylla.ai.